Everyone, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the Committee of Adjustment meeting for Friday, June 9, 2023. Before we begin, I'd like to mention the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that we are working on the lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous people continue to share to care for this land and continue to shape our township. We show our respect and will continually honor the treaties that were signed as we consider our decisions and actions. This morning, there is a public meeting scheduled for 3 consent applications and 6 minor variance applications. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be followed for the meeting. First, the Secretary Treasurer will advise the committee as to when, how, and to whom notice of each of the hearings is circulated for the applications being considered. Next, each of the applications will be considered separately. Planning staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the applications and provide any information that is relevant. The Secretary Treasurer will summarize any correspondence on file, and from there, the applicant may make a brief presentation if they so choose. And I would just say this morning, because of the number of items on our agenda, please don't repeat anything that that's already been submitted. After the public forum, the committee will then deliberate on the proposed applications and consider a motion to pass, defeat, or defer the decision of the applications. The consent applications being considered this morning are B22-04 for 182 High Street in MacDier, B23-11 to B23-19 for O'Hare Point Road, B23-04, 07-08 for Toby's Road. The minor variance applications being considered this morning are A22-15 for 862 Haskets Drive, A2307 for 385 Steep Rock Road, A2308 for 176 Holiday Road, A23-17 for 78 Blueberry Lane, A23-09 for 1098 Honey Harbor Road, and A23-11 for 1470 Island 90 and 6 Mile Lake. And before we begin, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, I have a resolution moved by member Rivet, seconded by member Predco. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes of May 12, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. I have a second resolution moved by member Matthews, seconded by member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment adopts the agenda dated June 9, 2023. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that motion is carried. Thank you. Madam Secretary, could you advise regarding the circulation of these applications?
Notice of each of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120, 500 meters, or 800 meters, or to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may have also been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act 1990.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And our first consent application this morning being considered is B22-04 for 182 High Street. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This morning, as stated, the first application is a consent application to create 4 lots. The subject property has an area of, sorry, I'm just going to try and screen. Oh, Sydney, it's saying I've been disabled from screen sharing. Thank you. I apologize for that. The first application is at 182 High Street, the property being approximately 5.26 hectares and a frontage of approximately 453.73 meters. The property currently has a residential structure located on the southerly portion of the lot. The property is also located within 120 meters of a provincially significant wetland on the west side of High Street, as well as the main CP rail line to the east. MacTier is identified as a settlement area in the District of Muskoka official plan and the Township of Georgian Bay official plan. The majority of growth within the township should be focused within settlement area boundaries, and development should be considered as infill situations. The purpose of the consent application is to create 4 new residential lots and 1 retained lot with frontage on High Street. The lot frontages and lot areas conform to the policies of the township official plan. These are the lots that are proposed to be created on the property. As you'll note on this, the property is within 100, this is the property here, and it is within 120 meters of a provincially significant wetland. A site evaluation report and environmental impact study was submitted in support of the proposal, which determined that lots could be created and development could proceed without negatively impacting the natural heritage features, species at risk, or significant wildlife habitat. Areas of sensitivity were identified on the subject property, and mitigation measures are being recommended in the EIS at the time of development of the newly created lots. A future zoning bylaw amendment will be required as a condition of approval, which staff are recommending, which will rezone these sensitive areas, as you can see here on the map, are being recommended in the EIS at the time of being development of the newly created lots. These zoning bylaw amendment will designate this area, zone this area as environmental protection. The applications before the committee are consistent with the provincial policy statement. They conform to the policies of both the District of Muskoka official plan and the Township of Georgian Bay official plan, and the requirements of the zoning bylaw relating to lot frontages and areas. Staff are recommending approval of the application subject to the recommended conditions.
One letter of no objection was received from the District of Muskoka, provided that Township Council is satisfied that noise and vibration impacts have been adequately addressed to the satisfaction of Canadian Pacific Railway and the Township of Georgian Bay, and that the following are included as conditions of consent. 1, that the applicant obtain conditional permits from the District of Muskoka for the proposed severed and retained lots for access onto the district road. And 2, that the applicant obtain written confirmation from the District of Muskoka Engineering and Public Works regarding the availability and or the location of municipal water and waste services.
Thank you. Is the applicant or their agent present, and would they wish to address the committee?
Yeah.
Is there anything you wish to offer? It was just a comment regarding the correspondence that we received regarding the application.
No, I'm happy that things are moving ahead. It's been a long.
Okay, thank you. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Jarvis.
Good morning. Yeah, I have no comments or questions with regards to this application.
Thank you. Member Predko.
Thank you, and through you, the chair. Just one question for the planning department, and this is probably a question more for when somebody submits a building application. But is there any concern about drainage along the back of the lot with the CP rail line? I know in town there are drainage problems with the culverts getting clogged in the springtime. Is there, and I know there's an environmental protection at the back of those lots. But is this considered a concern at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This, of course, will be directed to the building department at the time. And of course, the building department will, of course, take that into consideration when the building envelopes are created and when construction is being considered.
Okay, I mean, my only other comment is that the building envelopes that are remaining look smaller than the locations of the buildings on the aerial photographs. But I'm sure that's a concern for the person who is looking to build in the future. So other than that, I have no other concerns for this proposal.
Thank you, Member Predko. Member Schmidt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. After reviewing this, I do not see any issue. I think there's a need for infill lots such as this. And although there's some limitations to the property size, I think it makes sense to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just point of clarity to the planning department on that one slide where you showed the very narrow lots, and there seemed to be a bit of a pinky purpley outline. Is that the border of the environmentally sensitive part of the lots?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll bring that back up again so we can look at it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, the pink outline that you see here, this pink area, that is this whole entire area in here is the EP area.
Sorry, I'm
These-
not seeing anything yet.
Oh. I apologize. Oh, sure. There we go. This is the environmental protection area all through here.
Okay, yep.
These are your building envelope areas.
Okay, it's just so faint on this.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarity. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Member Matthews. Member Rivet.
Yes, thank you. It's encouraging to see the development in Mactier. We definitely need it, especially with the housing crisis that we have. I do have some questions in regard to the requirements. So this is just a severance, and the parcels can be registered for sale. Is that correct to the planner? Can now be registered for sale. The only reason I ask is this parcel of land was subject to a severance years ago. Those additional lots were created, and one of the requirements was that the lots have water and sewer at the lot. Could you put that map back up just so I could show you some areas of concern? And because of the district requirements, those lots are also subject to an additional 10 feet encroachment into the property to allow for the expansion of that district road. So for those services to come back into those lots, those particular lots that are being severed, it's probably the lowest point of the road. It's quite steep from the road to where the lot goes. So when the services go in, there's going to have to be significant infill to allow an entrance permit. The prior owner was required, or the prior person that came to sever the lots had to put that in. I would just think, because this is potential for development of 4 really desirable lots, that when they're sold, there's going to be considerable disruption to put in their driveways, to put in their services. They're all very close, within 60 feet. That I think part of the terms of condition prior to sale is that entrance permits and the services should be to the property line. Otherwise, it's going to be very disruptive to the town to have to deal with 4 different driveways and services going on in a very narrow road. I think it should be part of the condition for sale. If that could happen, it's going to be more desirable for sale. Maybe the parkland dedication is worth more for that as well, but it needs to be considered. So part of our role as Committee of Adjustment is to look at all the variables that affect this, and that is one. And if I could just go to the lot for one, the picture here. Map. You can see that this is environmentally sensitive because it's low lying. This is dry right here, but when this area gets flooded, this gets wet as well. So the driveways have to come in here where it's really low, so it has to be raised. And the services have to come in these two additional lots here.
I apologize. Very difficult to hear her right now. Sorry.
I'm sorry?
You need to be in front of the microphone, and Rivet. Otherwise people can't hear you.
Oh, that's right. This is environmentally protected because it's very low lying and it's a swamp. And you're right, there are problems. The CPR rail, the culvert that drains into Stewart Lake is backed up. So it's always wet there. We're having more rains and more floods. I just think for the protection of the property and for, for protection from the community that's going to be affected with this build, that these entrances should be assessed to make sure that there is going to be enough building envelope here with a proper access, because it's low lying, it's very swampy. And I just think that the services should be in advance so that the community doesn't have to deal with the disruption for 4 separate services going in.
Thank you, Member Rivet. Is there a comment from planning in regard to that?
The conditions of approval, which are in front of you, correct? In your report, have a requirement for them to enter an agreement with the District of Muskoka, which controls sewer, water, and entrance permits. So that will be as a condition for each of the lots, that there be that kind of agreement. It's also a requirement, if required by the township, for agreement with us. We may take a look at lot grading in particular because of, and we do that on all properties because we try to make sure that our stormwater is directed in appropriate directions. So, yeah, sorry. So, yeah, we do take care of all of it, which is why we have the letter from the district saying that they've taken a look at it. It was from EPW, which is Engineering and Public Works, which looks at the things you pointed out. They are, if they're satisfied that proper driveway permits can be issued, then they that's, I think, their sign off for it. And it requires an individual application by each property owner to, or at that time to get those permits. One lot may be developed in 2024, another lot may be developed in 2028. We have no idea. Right? It's up to the market to see when they go. And at that point in time, the services are dealt with to the appropriate process with the district or with the township. So, and there's a possibility maybe the lots are never developed. We never know. Right now, we take a look at the feasibility of the lots and we make sure we have the appropriate process in place, and then that we cover off the appropriate agreements as required. And then Mr. Murch goes back and deals with that with potential property buyers.
Okay, thank you very much for both the question and the thorough explanation of how that works. I see Mr. Prado has his hand up. Is there a further comment, Mr. Pecco?
Yes, I just wanted to note that on the survey from Azimuth Environmental Consulting, they do note the location of water and sewer valves along these front of the property. So I believe that water and sewage does already exist in that area.
Okay, thank you very much. And if there are no further questions or comments, I'm sorry, Member Rivet.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I understand the process to have the lots developed by an individual owner. I'm just suggesting, or I am suggesting that is there an opportunity that the township or the district can require the owner to have the services in place prior to sale, as it was a condition when the lots to the north were developed? That was the condition at that time, was the owner had to have the water and sewer at the property, not that it's running down the street. And these 4 lots, 2 of them have services, the other 2, it's just running down the street in front of it. And it's the two southern lots where that's happening. So I just wanted to know if it was a condition, then it can't be applied now. That's my question. Thank you.
Member Root, if I might answer that, I think, as was mentioned before, if you look at condition 9 on the resolution, it covers that in a great deal of detail and explicitly refers to water wells, provisions for roads, installation of services, facilities, drainage, and timing and payment of the development charge. So I think we've got that, but I appreciate you bringing it up. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Jarvis, seconded by member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby grants provisional approval to consent application B22-04 and 04A, 04B, 04C, and 04D. So it's the same resolution for each of those. So I'll just read it once. And subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner pay the balance of all outstanding taxes as of date of the certification or transfer deed with respect to the property that is subject to the application shall be made to the treasurer of the Township of Georgian Bay. 2, that this decision applies only to the lots indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. The lot shall subsequently conform to Schedule A. 3, that a reference plan, a survey that is registered, be completed and a digital copy and a hard copy be filed with the Township Planning Department, or an exception from the reference plan be received from the registrar. Number 4, that pursuant to section 53, subsection 42 of the Planning Act, that the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of giving the notice of decision. Note that section 5343 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, i.e. stamping of the deed. 5, that the clerk of the township provide written confirmation that a zoning bylaw amendment is in force and effect to rezone portions of the subject lands from the R4 zone to environmental protection zone to recognize the recommendations of section 8.0 of the scoped environmental impact study prepared by Azimuth Environmental Consulting, Inc., dated November 30, 2022, as amended. Number 6, that the owner pay 5% in lieu of parkland dedication to the severed lands in accordance with section 51, subsection 1 of the Planning Act and Township of Georgian Bay bylaw number 88-74. The township shall retain an appraiser at the owner's expense to prepare the appraisal. Number 7, that the owner enter into an agreement with the township if deemed necessary by the Township Planning Department in accordance with section 51, subsection 26 of the Planning Act to implement the recommendations of the site evaluation report and scoped environmental impact study, EIS, prepared by Azimuth Environmental Consulting in Inc., dated November 30, 2002. That should be 22. As amended, and peer review response. Number 8, that the owner's solicitor submits all deeds for certification for file B22-04, A, B, C, and D to the township at the same time, or that the Director of Planning Township of Georgian Bay waive this condition in whole or in part. And number 9, that the owner enter into an agreement with the District of Muskoka if deemed necessary by the district to satisfy all the requirements, financial or otherwise, of the district, which may include but shall not be limited to the location of water wells, provision of roads, installation of services, facilities, drainage, and the timing and payment of development charge. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. Our next application, yes, is B23-11 through B23-19 for O'Hara Point Road. To the planner, please.
Chairman Hill, members of the committee. These are multiple applications for easements. The report covers multiple consent applications as they all apply to the same lands, which is why they're all grouped together. O'Hara Point Road, and I'll show a map in a minute, an existing private roadway is proposed to be extended across multiple properties owned by multiple entities, and including the federal government, provincial government, the township of Georgian Bay, and another private landowner. The extension of O'Hara Road will be the first step in providing private road access to 4 lots, 3 of which have existing water access only, and 1 which is an existing landlocked lot. There are multiple easement applications since each of the 4 lots needs separate approval. The applicants will need to receive permission or approval from the Government of Canada, Province of Ontario, the Township of Georgian Bay in the form of written permission or a letter of occupation to cross lands owned by these entities which are not part of the easement application. A further 4 consent or easement applications will need to be submitted to the township in order to cross another property that's not part of the application in front of you today. Approval of these applications will not result in the creation of any new lots. They are easements only. We are seeing here, and I'll zoom a bit more. The line in green, I'm going to follow down with the hand, if you can see that, is O'Hara Point Road, which ends currently at the top of what is labeled as section 4. Section 1, the little piece of O'Hara Road here. Section 1 is owned by the federal government. Section 2 is owned by the province. Section 3 is owned by Mr. O'Hara. And Section 4 is owned by the two property owners, and that is subject to the easement at the moment. Section 5 is owned by the township of Georgian Bay, and Section 6 is owned again by the province of Ontario. O'Hara Road, from where it ends here, is proposed to be extended through Section 4 and across Section 5 to provide access to 3 lots down here, and I'll show you the setup here. So again, this is the approximate location of the proposed easement. I mentioned 3 water access only lots are these 3. 1 landlocked lot, which is this one here. And the proposal is these 3 here, and this lot here would gain access to O'Hara Point Road, which ends here across this easement, and with a further letter of occupation to, with the township of Georgian Bay to access here. Review the applications in light of the provincial policy statement, the township of Georgian Bay official plan, the township, the district of Muskoka official plan, and the zoning bylaw of the township, and found no issues. We therefore recommend approval of the easements that are before committee this morning. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
1 letter of no objection was received from the district of Muskoka.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do you wish to add anything to the comments of the planner? So, okay, thank you very much. Are there any members of the public in attendance that wish to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public session, bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I have no comments. I congratulate the planning department for explaining the different ownerships. And when you first read the report, it was a little confusing, but I think you did an excellent job, Mr. Smith. So I have no objections to this.
Thank you. Member Jarvis.
I sorry I missed the part of that because I got cut off, but I read the report quite thoroughly and was quite thoroughly confused. I think as maybe Councilor Member Matthews was too. So obviously we're only doing a portion of this, and the members of the group that are seeking this easement have a lot of work ahead of them. I'm quite happy with what the process is so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Predko.
Yep, I would echo the comments of members Jarvis and Matthews. it is a confusing path that this road is taking, but I have no further concerns or objections.
Thank you. Member Schmidt,
Obviously seeing a pattern of echoing the feelings as we read through this entire report. But well done again by staff and a great explanation and support. Thank you.
thank you. Member Rivet,
I have no issues. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, if there are no, is there any correspondence? Okay, you did not, all right. The, seeing no further questions or comments. Next, okay, thank you very much. No further questions or comments. I will read the resolution. Moved by member Matthews, seconded by member Rivet. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby grants provisional approval to consent application B 23-11 for an easement subject to the following conditions. And when I say B11, I'd like to refer to B11 through to B19. So the same resolution applies to all of those. Number one, that the owners of the dominant and servient lands provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. Next, that a reference plan, a survey that is registered, be completed and a digital copy and a hard copy be filed with the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the registrar. A draft copy of the reference plan shall be provided to the Secretary Treasurer for review and approval prior to registration of the survey. And that pursuant to section 53, subsection 42 of the Planning Act, that the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of notice of decision. Note section 53, subsection 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate stamping of deed. And that the owner of the dominant lands obtain a new 911 municipal number from the township if deemed necessary by the township, and install said 911 municipal number at the owner's expense and to the satisfaction of the township. And that the owner of the dominant lands enter in an agreement with the township if deemed necessary by the township to satisfy all the requirements, financial and otherwise, of the township, which may include but shall not be limited to a license of occupation, a provision of roads, the provision of roads, installation of services, facilities, drainage, and the timing and payment of development charge. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. Our next application is B 23-04 through B 23-07-08, both A and B, for Toby's Road. To the planner, please.
Chairman Neal, members of the committee, consent applications B04, 05 through to 08 AA proposed to reconfigure the lot lines of 4 existing water access only lots in order to provide new frontage onto Toby's Road. Approval of these applications will not result in the creation of any new lots. It is a lot line reconfiguration. Some movement of lot area from one piece to another. Gets a little complicated, believe it or not. The lots do abut fish habitat type 1. A fish habitat assessment was provided. It concluded that provided the mitigation recommended the assessment was carried out, there'll be no impacts on the habitat. There are no environmental features, for example, wetlands on the subject lands. There is another wetland located within 30 meters across Toby's Road in this particular case, from the subject lands, and I am the opinion that the proposed changes in the lot lines and the new driveways would not have a detrimental impact on this feature, and yes, was not required in this regard. Approval of these applications will allow for new driveways to be constructed to 3 existing lots, thereby increasing their usage with an attendant minimal increase of traffic on Toby's Road. Development of the new driveways and the clearing of building sites is already commenced. The lot owner will have to prove that the changes already made to the landscape conform to the assessment report, and that with any applicable policies of the township zoning bylaw. Figure 2 did not come through in your planning report, so we're going to use this one here. The property outlined in gold is one property. That property currently has, as you can see, access onto Toby's Road. The other 3 lots are comprised of the lands in red. They're outlined in red. One of the lots down here, you can see the little gray line is one of the lots, and the other 2 are bound up in this particular piece of parcel here. Those are the players, that we're taking a look at here, with the goal that these water access only lots will end up with access onto Toby's Road. This is in your planning report. It may help if you are able to take a look at it on your package. It's page 74, your planning report. This is the final your proposed arrangement of the lots. There's multiple things kind of going on here, but at the end of the day, this is what they want, and this is what we are recommending for lotting arrangement. Property owned by Bush. Sorry, and there's a typo on here. This property here that says in red is going to be one of the Tuzi lots. This part 4 here and part 15 is another one of the Tuzi lots, and the third Tuzi lot is this one on the edge here. All of them will provide frontage, as you can see, onto Toby's Road, which runs across the top here. 2 of these properties, as you can see, are basically driveway access onto Toby's Road, and the third Tuzi property will end up with more frontage than the other 2, and the Bush property will get smaller, but it will be reconfigured to give it a more kind of useful shape, if I can use that word. And when I say useful shape, if you take a look here, and I'm going to follow up through the hand, this is a triangle that is currently owned by the Tuzis. And you can see that it's kind of butts into the Bush property through this setup. So that's proposed to go to the Bush lot, giving it a more defined square, you can use that word, feature, and again, giving the remainder of the properties access onto Toby's Road by the reconfiguration. We reviewed the application in light of the provincial policy statement, the District of Muskoka official plan, the Township of Georgian Bay official plan, and the zoning bylaw, and found no concerns. We therefore recommend approval of the applications as per the conditions in front of committee this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
One letter of no objection was received from the District of Muskoka.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to address the committee? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and or I guess good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Jamie Robinson with MHBC Planning. I'm the planning consultant for both Bushes and for Tuzi's that we've made this application. First off, fully agree with the recommendations of the staff report and the conditions that are identified. I know they're lengthy. Secondly, just tip my hat to Mr. Smith for his organization of this file and his descriptions of the lots and how he's arranged the staff report and conditions. I think he's done a great job at that. I thought that our application was complicated until I saw the last one that was before you as well. So he's done a great job trying to manage multiple properties and descriptions and whatnot. Just wanted to be clear that to the committee that an environmental review was completed. There's no request for any variances from the requirements of the zoning bylaw with respect to setbacks from the high water mark or anything like that. As a result of these applications, it's simply to reconfigure for existing lots. South Bay, as you know, is a portion of Georgian Bay that's considered at capacity for development. So just to be clear, there's no new lots being created as a result of this application. And it fully is in conformity with the municipality's official plan. If there's any questions of the committee, I'd be happy to answer those. But again, we fully agree and support the conditions as well as the recommendations included in that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the committee regarding this application? Okay, seeing that, I'll close the public session of the of this meeting, bring the application before the committee for any questions and concerns. And we will begin with member Rivet.
Thank you. Just for my clarification. This is going to allow for 4 severable waterfront lots, where currently 3 exist. Is that what I'm
Just
understanding?
through
Or
the-
all- Do the lots?
There are 4 lots now. There will be 4 lots when we're done. There is a bush lot, that's the name, and 3 lots owned by the Tuzis. And they all exist today. They can all be built on. In fact, 2 of them are built on already. Because they've been in existence for years. So 4 lots now, 4 lots when we're finished.
But are there 4 shoreline lots now or
3, no,
3?
yeah, 4 shoreline. So 3 water access only shoreline lots owned by the Tuzis.
Right.
1 waterfront lot owned by the Bush with access on the Toby's Road.
I'm just not understanding where so the green lot is 1. The
What you're
orange one,
seeing here is the final proposed arrangement, correct?
okay,
So see if you can follow.
thank you.
The existing Tuzi lots. So this, all the way over to here. And down here, and then along the waterfront. And there's 3 lots in there, existing today, registered, being able to be built on, water access only. Because they don't have that frontage. The bush lot goes over here, goes back that way. And then comes all the way back over here and then up. So it has water frontage here. And it's access to Toby's Road here, which is going to be a little smaller because they're selling land to the Tuzis.
With respect, I can't see what David is pointing at.
Who said that?
Councilor Chair.
That's good, thank you. That's good. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, anything further, member Rivet? Okay, thank you. Member Jarvis, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Jamie Robinson that David has cleared up some concerns I had with this presentation, and I appreciate that very much. So I have no further questions on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Schmidt.
Thank you again for the thorough explanation. Looks like neighbors working through a situation to create a better situation. I think this makes perfect sense. And thanks again for the explanation on it.
Thank you. Member Predko.
I have no further questions or concerns.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'd echo the brilliant work of the planning department and explaining it to us laymen or lay people. Just one quick question, part 4 and part 5, those 2 lots that I assume, well, I guess I've answered my own question. You said they already exist, so they must be of legal size. Would that be correct? That they can build on?
They are a lot of record. They have zoning which would allow them to build on it according to the setbacks and lot coverage.
Answered my own question.
I like to thank you for the compliment, but I gotta say that the report that come in sorting this out and coming to how this works for the Tuzi and bushes. It was definitely a work of art by MHBC. And when I say work of art, a good work of art, right, in that regard. So that work that came in certainly facilitated this and that work too. So thank you for that. Makes our life a lot simpler and makes working with yourselves a lot easier too. So.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And with that note regarding efficiency, I'd just like to point out that I have in front of me a stack of resolutions that are required normally to address each of the lots that are being concerned, but from the in the interest of brevity, and I will say that other than the individual description of these lots as we go through is pretty much the same. So what I propose to do is to read one of the resolutions, and for those that wish to look at the details of the entire application, the details of each of the lots that are being discussed are available. So with that, I will read the first of many resolutions here. Moved by member Schmidt, seconded by member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby grants provisional approval to consent application. In this case, it's B24 or B23-04, 07, B23-08A, and B23-08B. Be in the same name and in configuration as shown on Schedule A, the final lot configuration attached to and forming part of this approval. That the application is a lot addition only, and that subsection 3 and 5 of section 50 of the Planning Act apply to all subsequent conveyance. The lawyer shall provide an undertaking to consolidate the pins for the property parcels upon registration of the consents. That the owner provide a property tax certificate, correspondence, or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And that a reference plan survey that is registered be completed and digital copy and hard copy be filed with the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment, or an exemption from the reference plan be received by the registrar. A draft copy of the reference plan shall be provided to the Secretary Treasurer for review and approval prior to registration of the survey. That the owner apply for a deeming bylaw at the sole cost of the owner deeming, and here's where I would insert each of the lot descriptions, not be a plan of subdivision. The deeming bylaw must be approved by the township, registered on title at the cost of the owner, and the solicitor for the owner shall provide an undertaking that the deeming bylaw be registered prior to the certification and registration of any transfer deeds. And that pursuant to section 53, subsection 43 of the Planning Act, that the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of notice. That note that section 53, subsection 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of a certificate or stamping of the deed. And that the owner obtain a driveway access permit from the township and install said access at the owner's expense to the satisfaction of the township. And that the owner obtain a new 911 municipal number for the township, if deemed necessary by the township, and install said 911 municipal number at the owner's expense to the satisfaction of the township. That the owner shall enter in an agreement as per section 51, subsection 26 of the Planning Act, SRO 1990 as amended, with the township, if deemed necessary by the township, implementing the recommendations of the Mikulski-Nielsen Fish Habitat Impact Assessment and Phase 2 Water Quality Assessment dated December 14, 2022. And said agreement shall be registered at the owner's expense against the title of the land subject to this approval. And the township shall be entitled to enforce said agreement against the owner and subject to the Registry Act and the Land Titles Act against any and all subsequent owners of the land. That the owner enter an agreement with the township if deemed necessary by the township to satisfy all of the requirements, financial or otherwise, of the township, which may include but shall not be limited to the provision of roads, installation of services, facilities, drainage, and the timing and payment of a development charge. And that the solicitor for the owner provide an undertaking that transfer deeds for provisional consent files B 23-04, B 23-05, B 2306, B 2307, B 2308A, and B 2808B will be registered in the following order. Number 1, B 2305, number 2, B 23-08A, 3, B 23-04, 4, B 23-08B, 5, B 23-07, and 6, B 23-06. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you.
Thank
The
you, Mr.
motion
Chairman.
is carried. Thank you very much. A lot of paper.
With all the compliments given to planning staff, I'd like to say kudos to Chair Hill for all its fantastic reading. Consider doing some children's books in your future.
Thank you, Member Schmidt, for those kind words. From this point, we'll move forward to the minor variance applications being considered this morning. And our first application is A 22-15 for 862 Haskett's Drive. And to the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application before you this morning, we did receive a correspondence from MHBC Planning dated June the 8th, actually requesting a deferral on this application, therefore no discussion to take place, as they'd like to confirm an increase in lot coverage that's being requested, as well as an existing tent structure on the property. And this came out of a letter that was received also from Morgan Planning and Development dated June 7th. So staff as well as the applicant are requesting a deferral at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Based on the presentation from the planning department, I have in front of me a resolution brought forward by Member Rivet, seconded by Member Predko. And it appears that the will of the committee then is to defer this application to a future meeting. Based on that, I would call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Very well. Thank you very much. The motion to defer is carried. Thank you very much. Our next application is A 23-07 for. Is that you, Mr. Matthews? Excuse me. Next application is A 23-07 for 385 Steep Rock Road. To the planner, please.
Just going to share my screen. Perfect. Through the chair, the purpose of this application is to recognize an existing floating dock, stationary dock, and ramp by permitting a maximum length of 17.42 meters, whereas a maximum length of 10 meters is permitted, and a maximum cumulative width of 17.42 meters for shoreline structures, whereas 14.58 meters is permitted. Staff understand that the floating dock replaced a previous stationary dock. However, sufficient evidence to support a legally existing status regarding the size and location of the previous dock could not be provided by the property owner. The subject property has an area of approximately 6,400 square meters and 97 meters of frontage on 6 Mile Lake. The property contains a detached dwelling, 2 accessory buildings, and a dryland boathouse. The remainder of the property contains granite rock and is heavily treed. The lands are designated waterfront area within the District of Muskoka and Township official plans and are located within the 6 Mile Lake waterfront community. The property is zoned 6 Mile Lake residential
which is SR6. The shoreline contains fish habitat type 2. However, no negative impacts are anticipated as a result of the proposed variances. A site visit was conducted on May 10th, and staff are recommending approval because the proposal meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, was there any correspondence on this application?
2 letters of support were received from Jeff and Kim Swinoga and John Carrick.
Thank you. Is the applicant present and do they wish to offer any further comment? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Victoria Hoffman. I'm here on behalf of Flow Drawings. I think the presentation was done well and it's pretty straightforward. I just kind of wanted to speak to the fact that we are replacing a structure that has been there since the 60s. It was, and unfortunately we don't have proof of that because it was damaged by the ice coming in and out. And then the floating dock was put in. So that's just kind of trying to acknowledge that. But if you guys have any questions, let me know. The property owners are also behind me if you'd like to talk to them.
Thank you very much. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public session, bring the application before the committee for any questions or concerns. And we'll begin with Member Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Had the opportunity to do a site visit on the property. You could definitely see the length of the dock is sort of a necessity based on the shallowness of the water on the inside of the dock. Being familiar with the lake and the north wind coming across, I would see why you'd want to have a docking on the backside of that structure. So I don't see any issues with that, with what they've proposed here. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Schmidt. Member Rivet, please.
I have no concerns with the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jarvis.
Yeah, I'll admit to having concerns over the actual length of that dock that's going in, but seeing that it's basically parallel to the shore, I don't see it being a significant obstacle in the lake. I think it's already been mentioned in some of the correspondence. So while I'm not happy with the length, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too had the opportunity to visit the site, and the ramp from the dry boathouse is for Mr. Jarvis's information, and it's required to get it out there. And it seems like a logical spot to be at the dryland boathouse and some inside parking. So I have no objection to this.
Thank you. Member Predko.
I also don't have any objections. I appreciate the photos that were included in the staff report show that there was a sizable dock that running along the side of the shoreline in the same orientation that this current dock is, and it was clearly damaged and had to be replaced. I don't have anything further I can add to this.
Thank you, Member Predko. If there are no further questions or concerns, I will read the resolution. Moved by Member Matthews, seconded by Member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application A23-07 for the floating dock and subject to the following conditions. That the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence with Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And that this decision applies only to the floating dock, stationary dock, and ramp as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. Our next application is A 23-08 for 176 Holiday Road. To the planner, please.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying. Yes, it just didn't want to quite get to where it needed to go. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, everyone in attendance. The subject property of the A 23-08-176 Douse minor variance application is located as shown on the screen. Ryan Robinson of RBA Projects Incorporated applied for this minor variance. This minor variance follows a historic minor variance, A 1840, that the committee approved some time ago based upon the legal non-conforming, non-complying status of the dwelling that predated this dwelling from the 1930s. The purpose and effect of the A 23-08 application is to increase the maximum gross floor area of a dwelling in subsection 6.4.1b of the zoning bylaw from 190 square meters to 223.14 square meters. The effect of the A 23-08 application is to permit the expansion of the half story of the dwelling on the subject lands without altering the exterior of the dwelling approved by A 1840. The subject land and adjacent lands are characterized by what I would call waterfront, 6 Mile Lake waterfront uses in the Precambrian Shield. While this is a subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act application, it is still important to consider the official plan and zoning bylaw context for this property, and it is within the SR6 zone. There are some adjacent SR6 zones, as you can see, on private properties along this section of 6 Mile Lake. However, there's also an extensive amount of crown land. Notice of this application was given as legally required, and no comments were received from agencies or the public before this report was written. Under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, there are only two tests for the committee to consider. Is this proposal desirable for the appropriate development of the property? And whether it results in an undue impact on adjacent lands. With regards to the first test, in my opinion, the application does not change any part of the exterior dwelling. Therefore, it is desirable. With regards to the second test, this is a 2018 air photo, which reflected the existing dwelling at the time. You can see at that time, the adjacent dwellings were much larger than the existing dwelling from the 1930s. This is a more contemporary 2023 air photo from Google, which has more recent air photography than we do. It shows the existing under construction dwelling as approved by the A 1840 application. And if you look at the roof sizes, again, that is other than the tree removal, but if you zero in on the actual roof sizes, very similar footprints on the land, very similar heights when you look at it from another perspective. So therefore, I do not see any evidence of adverse impact from this application. And I recommend that the committee resolve that it approve the minor variance A 23-08 for the purpose of increasing the maximum gross floor area for a dwelling in subsection 6.4.1B of the zoning bylaw from 190 square meters to 223.14 square meters for the subject lands municipally known as 176 Holiday Road. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence? Has there been any correspondence?
No microphone.
No correspondence was received.
Thank you. Is the applicant present and do they wish to add anything to the planner's comments? Okay.
I am present. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to add, and I just wanted to thank Jeff for all his diligent help in walking me through this process. Thank you.
Could you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Certainly. Ryan Robinson. My home address is 18 Nicholson Crescent, Minising, Ontario.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public, either in present or online, that wishes to address this application? Seeing none, we'll close the public session of this application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. My first question is really just to understand exactly what is offending, other than this is a variance from the original approved development and building permit. Are we offending the GFA in any way or any other zoning bylaws? I didn't see anything like that in the report.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the GFA is being increased from 190 square meters to 223.14 square meters. And it is strictly for an expansion in the half floor of the floor area over space that previously was intended to be clear from the first floor to the top of the half floor.
Okay, so the zoning bylaw allowed for 190 square meters based on the percent increase, and they're actually looking for 223. Is that correct?
Yes, there's no percentage increase discussed in my report, but it is an increase from 190 in the bylaw to 223.14. I would have to look at the A1840 decision to see specifically the amount that it authorized.
That's okay. It's minor in nature. I'm just making sure that I understood the numbers correctly that we were looking at for. I mean, that's really my primary question. I don't think I see any other issues other than noting that, you know, we've discussed GFAs a lot on 6 Mile Lake in the last few days, and I think this is one of those examples that when the mayor was talking about how GFA can be adjusted without really changing the exterior development or appearance of the dwelling in any way. But that's all I think I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Predko. Member Rivet, please.
I have no concerns with the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have an opportunity to visit the site yesterday. I would like to thank GPS for getting me there. It's a long road down, but there's essentially going to be no change in visible from the footprint. It's just a little adjustment on the inside, so I have no objections to this.
Thank you. Member Schmidt.
In echoing Member Predko's comments there, this does fall exactly into line with the discussions that were recently had in council chambers with regard to, you know, footprint and utilization of the inside of a structure. I think it falls under the category of the definition of the GFA, but being the, you know, brand new updated septic system there in comparison to what was there before. I think this just brings it into honest compliance. And I think that's kudos to the property owner for doing it this way instead of after the fact. So I support this.
Thank you. Member Jarvis.
Yeah, so points of clarification for the planner, if that's all right with him. So what we're suggesting here is the owner originally applied for an expansion of 190 square meters. That was the original application, or was that an application in addition to the original 2018 application?
Mr. Chairman, through you to just give me 1 second and I will tell you exactly what the A14 or sorry, A1840 decisions stated. So the decision in 2018, the resolution stated that the application be approved to permit an increase in maximum width of a dwelling where 25% of lot frontage 16 meters is permitted to 33.3% of lot frontage 21.3 to permit a reduction in the minimum required front yard setback to a dwelling where 20 meters is required to 17.8 meters and to permit a reduction in the minimum required front yard setback to a septic system where 30 meters is required to 15 meters in order to facilitate the construction of a detached dwelling and an expansion of the existing septic system pursuant to the 6 Mile Lake residential SR6 zone with conditions that applied at that time. That being said, again, this was a 45-2 application then, i.e. legal non-conforming, non-complying, and it is a 45-2 application now. The reason I did not get into the previous decision of the committee is that it varied issues that had little to do with the GFA that is being varied today. But that being said, that was the list of items that the committee previously accepted as appropriate variances to the bylaw, given the historic nature of the existing dwelling.
I appreciate the indulgence on that, Mr. Chair and our planner. So what we're saying is that there wasn't a GFA discussion in the original. My concern here, and the reason I mentioned this, is we're looking at sort of in a manner it could be conceived as sort of creeping expansion by, ongoing requests for changes and increases. I'm certainly hoping there are no further requests for expansion. I do agree though with other members of the committee that this is not going to be going to have any change in the visual impact of the building. It's already quite substantial as it is. And that is the extent of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. If there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Moved by Member Predko, seconded by Member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Georgian Bay hereby approves minor variance application A23-08 for the purpose of increasing the maximum gross floor area for a dwelling in subsection 6.4.1 subsection B of the zoning bylaw from 190 square meters to 223.14 square meters for the subject lands municipally known as 176 Holiday Road, assessment roll number 4465-030-0270-300, subject to conditions being one, that the owners provide a property tax certificate or a correspondence from the Township Financial Service indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the subject lands. And 2, that this decision applies only to the expansion of the half floor as shown on the drawings attached as schedules to this decision and appearing as attachments 2, 3, and 4 to the Development Services report regarding the A23-08 application. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. The application is approved. The motion is carried. Our next application is A 23-17 for 78 Blueberry Lane. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, the purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a new detached dwelling with an increased gross floor area, building width and height, which will also result in an increase to the maximum permitted lot coverage. Although the size is being increased, the detached dwelling will be set back 18.3 meters from the front lot line, whereas the existing detached dwelling is set back 16.3 meters. The subject property has an area of 3,822 square meters and 47 meters of frontage on Little Go Home Bay. Within the District of Muskoka official plan, the lands are designated waterfront area and located within a deer wintering area, stratum 2, as well as identified as having moderate to high archaeological potential. The lands are designated waterfront within the township official plan, and the shoreline contains fish habitat type 2. The applicant has prepared an erosion and sediment control plan to the satisfaction of the planning department, and no negative impacts to the natural features are anticipated as a result of the proposed variances. The lands are zoned shoreline residential type 1. The property is currently occupied by a detached dwelling with an L-shaped deck, a shed in the rear yard, a gazebo in the front yard accessed by a freestanding deck, and 5 staircases with 4 landings providing access down to the water, which contains a U-shaped dock. The detached dwelling, L-shaped deck, and gazebo will be removed to accommodate the proposed detached dwelling. The proposed dwelling will be the applicant's primary residence, whereas the existing dwelling on the lot is used as a cottage seasonally. A site visit was conducted on May 10th, and staff are recommending approval because the application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, has there been correspondence in this application?
6 letters of support were received from Barry and Diane Emo, Moses Levy and Joyce Tom, Orlando Marine Kirkness, Sandy and Tamara Kennedy, Susan Young, and Rob Peary and Amanda Van Peary. 1 letter of no objection was received from Parks Canada.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present or agent, and do they wish to address the committee on this application?
Good morning, everyone.
And please identify yourself with your address.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dan Young, and I'm the owner of 78 Blueberry Lane. On behalf of my wife, Sarah, and myself, we just want to thank the chair, members of the committee, and township staff for your consideration of our application today. I'll try to be brief, as I recognize there's a number of other applications to be discussed and reviewed today. And also, I just want to note that the staff report was extremely well done, so I don't have too much to add, but I'll just quickly give a little bit of background to say that over 2 years ago, we reached out to township staff before looking at any sort of changes to the property. And we really wanted to get a sense of, what was possible. We'd outgrown our little 2-bedroom cottage, and we really wanted to move here full time. And having grown up in the area, I knew it was important, and having been a cottager for many years, that there was a process to follow, and we wanted to make sure that we followed that process appropriately. So township staff have been wonderful to work with. They've guided us every step of the way. What you see here proposed today really is a collaboration of working with township staff. A lot of changes were made along the way throughout the course of this process, including going through the pre-application process as well. And we're very pleased to have the approval of township staff on our application. I do just want to take a second though and thank staff for all of their guidance and expertise, in particular Shania Wantfor in the planning department, and also Kaylee Nicholson in the planning department. So again, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your review of this application, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or concerns. And we'll begin with Member Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification on my part, we're taking an existing building, one story that is currently 223 square meters in size, and proposing to build a new build that is 587 square meters in size. Have I got that correct?
Through the chair, the existing dwelling has a gross floor area of 223 approximately square meters. The new will have a total of 587 square meters.
Okay, that's my point, and I'm having very significant difficulty in understanding how, from a percentage increase size, this could be considered a minor variance. I understand where it meets some of the requirements of the four things it needs to sort of fulfill, but just the percentage increase to me, I cannot in any way consider minor, and I think going to the planning application would be better than going to committee of adjustment on this. So there's where I'm having lots of trouble with this one, is the increase in size. Thank you.
I'm just asking planning, if you would just highlight for the benefit of Mr. Jarvis, the difference between what is allowed and what is proposed.
Through the chair, the applicant is permitted to increase the detached dwelling on the lot to a total of 379.69 or 67 square meters. That's the permitted increase under the zoning bylaw. They are proposed.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, Mr. Jarvis? You're muted.
No microphone.
My big primary concern is that size. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I just add some additional comment?
Not at this time,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
We'll see if that lingers at the end, and then we'll answer it. So, Member Matthews, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had an opportunity to visit the site. Mr. Young showed me around a bit. There are some advantages, I guess you might call it, that the proposed new building has. It's going to be set back. Can't go forward because there's an enormous steep drop down to the water, probably 50, 60 feet. I don't know, more than I want to jump anyways. But I do share Member Jarvis's concern about the size of the property. Is still 200 plus square meters over what is allowed. So I will reserve judgment at this point, but I would welcome to hear from other members of the committee.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Matthews. Member Rivet.
Thank you. I have concerns with the size, only because of the overhead easement that restricts development there. And I also wonder if it should be subject to a planning approval to max, just to confirm that any further development should probably be limited. I mean, with the garage, the location of the septic, it doesn't leave much left, and it's pretty, the buildings are right to the edge, within both sides of the property line. However, having said that, I don't hear any concerns from neighboring property owners. But I do have concerns with the fact that it is 50% more. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rivet. Member Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair Hill. And through you, had the opportunity as well to do a site visit on the property. I see the percentage increase is based on the existing dwelling that is on the property, correct?
Through the chair, yes. In accordance with the zoning bylaw, excuse me, they are permitted to increase the maximum gross floor area to a maximum of 70% based on the existing gross floor area.
So thank you for that clarification. If there wasn't a building on this property, what would the permitted square footage be for this property? Do you have access to that at all?
Through the chair, in the SR1 zone, we actually do not put a max on the gross floor area. The only reason that this application is subject to a gross floor area cap is because we are considering this, that there was an existing dwelling and they're expanding. If this were to have gone through a different section of the zoning bylaw, section 7.3, he would be in compliance. This gross floor area would not be an issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for that clarification. Again, through the site visit, and I know, the fact that the garage is attached, that might have a slightly different lens if the garage was detached to the size and massing. There is some definitely consistency amongst the neighboring area for the type of property that they plan on developing here. Based on the numbers that you see on the screen, I definitely see the apprehension or the concern of the sheer difference in size from the original. But I guess I'm kind of looking at it through the lens of if this was a vacant lot without an old and although very well maintained older property, if that wasn't there, this would be a rubber stamping down the road. That's the lens that I'm looking at through this. But I reserve for more discussion from the other members.
Thank you, Member Schmidt. Member Predko.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I'm also kind of, scratching my head at the increase of the GFA. And when I was looking at this over the weekend, or not the weekend, earlier in the week, and with the lens of our conversation of GFA over the last week or two, I think what I would echo is really some of the comments of Member Schmidt, that if this was a new build, we'd be having a different conversation, and it wouldn't be in context of comparative size. And as I'm looking at the lot coverage breakdown and the GFA that adds up to our 500 and whatever square meters, if they had chosen to not have an attached garage and that screen porch was a gazebo on the property, our GFA number would probably be in the right permitted range of increase, and not that would be a better outcome. We would have outbuildings that would have more impact on the site. Looking at the site plan, the location of the current cottage and how it's spread out, I think that there is obviously more coverage on the land, but it's all back from the water except for the screen porch. I think they've done a pretty good job of trying to minimize the impact from the waterfront. And I think overall they're trying to be respectful of the constraints that are put on them. Again, the overall size compared to what's permitted is, I think, what's the concern. So I'm still trying to wrangle in my own mind how that equates. And I'll listen to any other comments to see how this conversation continues.
Thank you, Member Predko. Just a couple of points to hopefully clear up some of this, and I would like your input, Mr. Young, in a minute. But just back to planning for a second. There seems to be discussion as to what is proposed as to what is permitted. And if I understood you earlier, if this was a vacant lot, there would not be a need for a application for a minor variance based on the proposed size of this cottage. Is that correct?
The gross floor area in the SR1 zone does not have a cap. If they comply with setbacks, height, lot coverage, it's permitted.
Excellent, thank you. And just a quick question to Madam Secretary. dealing with feedback from neighboring properties. Were there any objections to this application?
No objections were received.
And how many favorable objections?
There was 6 letters of support.
And any of them close to the location of this property?
One of the letters of support was from the neighboring property.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Thank you, and thank you for your indulgence there, Mr. Young. Is there anything that you wish to add to that? I'm sorry, I didn't notice that. If I could ask you to wait, Mr. Smith, you had a comment?
If I may, Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Matthews. We've focused a lot of over the years with view from the canoe, right? I think it's a very important and ongoing discussion on that regard. And when we took a look at this one, further setback, the availability still of those mature trees on a very steep slope, kind of began to facilitate that kind of thing that, yeah, it's bigger, but we also provided that long-term screening a little bit further back. So it's kind of like, okay, checkbox number 1. Number 2, we're not close to the neighbors in this particular case. You know, the neighbors, we saw no objection from the neighbors. We also see from some of the surrounding properties, and whether or not they're good examples or bad, is that, man, there's a lot worse than what this would look like. Okay, going backwards up back into the property, of course, is where we want that to kind of go, as opposed to going up in height, also giving you nice bedroom views right on a second floor or that much higher. So going back that way to give additional living room or living space is good for us. And you may be surprised to know that this is actually smaller than what we started off with. Is that Mr. Young and us have had discussions to try and find a compromise between him and his family's needs and concerns of the planning department within that. With going back to what we talked about, I just mentioned, our primaries, view from the lake, impacts to the environment, impacts to the next door neighbors. And after that, it's private property. We look at this as being able to use it for as much as you can until you begin to impact those things that were overall important to us. Numbers, I don't care, right? You can go down 3 floors for basement and go, my God, we got 5,000, 6,000 square feet. It was the impact to the neighbor and to the overall property. And in this particular case, Mr. Young has also provided a little bit of maybe additional planting possibilities in the property. Obviously, the lakeside is a little tough to put trees into bedrock, but you know, those kind of considerations is what we're looking for, right? Use your property for as much as possible until you begin to impact the things that are important to us overall as neighbors and important overall to us as a township. And I think that this one here, Shania's pointed out, kind of hit that kind of, you know, it's a big, yeah, but overall, that's, I think our recommendation is as it stands. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and I just, want to comment that with respect to the gross floor area, as has been pointing out by planning staff, the existing cottage is quite small. Part of the gross floor area calculation includes things like exterior overhang entryways, garage, basement space, things like that. The existing cottage does not have any of those items. So we're actually not looking at, some might refer to the quote unquote monster sized places. We hear that kind of terminology. This is actually a 3-bedroom, like a bungalow with 3 bedrooms on the main floor. The topography of the lot requires a basement. So now you've got a bungalow with a basement. We chose to do an attached garage, which adds significantly to the gross floor area calculation. And we chose to do that because it allows us, rather than having a detached garage, which would maybe require a breezeway and those sorts of things, it allows us to push the cottage, the residents further back from the water. There is a hydro line that is a main feed that goes through the property. And if we needed to, we could look at that and pull that up. But that limits how far back you can go or put a garage and that sort of thing. So really, when we look at this, a great deal of the gross floor area is actually basement and attached garage. And the attached garage that is part of the gross floor area, we specifically moved it to be behind the main dwelling so that you wouldn't see it from the water. It just made more sense than going in a different direction with attached breezeways and all of these things. This really sort of compressed it, but it does impact from a gross floor area number.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. And based on the comments we just heard, before I read the resolution, are there any members of the committee that have additional questions? I see one hand up there from Member Jarvis. Your question, sir.
Yeah, really quickly, and I appreciate all the comments that have been made, particularly by our planners on this and the owner, the person representing the owner, which is, I mean, it is helpful information. And I just have one question as a result of all this. Based on the report from one of the reports, there was an increase in lot coverage from permissible of 10% to 11.6. Would that not, if it was a new build, still have brought it to committee of adjustment? That'd be for our planner.
Through the chair, if this new build triggered an increase to the 10% lot coverage, then yes, it would have come to the committee of adjustment.
Okay, so we would be seeing this, but certainly in a different context if it was a new build, which I appreciate Member Schmidt for bringing that to my attention. I think that's crucial information to know. And the only other comment I have, I'm still struggling with this, believe me. The other comment has, when you have neighbors all being okay with this, that could be perceived as being just self-serving on their part. Either they want to do something similar or they've already got something that's really big as well. I certainly have my issues with this, but I certainly now better understand the situation, and I thank everybody for their input.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So now, could you just put that shot that you had up again for a moment, please? Sorry about that. Or my hand. So I'm just a little confused. Down from the garage in the main building, it says approximate location of septic tank, which looks like the building is going right over top of it. Is that correct? And maybe our building department would like to comment on the building over a septic tank?
Yeah, that's the existing septic tank. There will be a new system involved.
Okay, so it didn't say existing, it just says.
Right, but all of those, the items are taken care of the building permit process, not something that you guys should even be worrying about just because they don't get a building permit unless they meet building code.
I agree, and I know you have a top-notch department, but it just jumped out at me that you're putting a building over a septic tank, so thank you for that clarity.
Thank you. Again, any further questions? Everybody, no hands. Oh, we have a question from planning.
Through the chair, I just want to reiterate that the increase to the lot coverage that's being proposed is only 1.6%. And this is actually an improvement to what currently exists. They're moving the dwelling back. They're removing structures in the front yard. They even provided a landscape plan and erosion sediment control plan. I would like you guys to consider that. And I also want to point out that Parks Canada did not have a problem with the redevelopment of this lot either.
Thank you. I think that's an important consideration for the members, is to realize that this is a basic improvement to what's there. And also, as the applicant mentioned, you're moving from a seasonal cottage to a permanent residence. So I'm certainly appreciate the value of attaching that garage. And I'll discuss this with planning later as to how come that, you know, attaching of the garage has such an impact on the overall impact of this, but I guess it still it runs into lot coverage. It doesn't matter whether it's attached or not. But in any case, I appreciate all the input, certainly very positive and certainly from the neighbors as well. So seeing no further questions, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Revitt, seconded by member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application A23-17 for the construction of a dedicated dwelling and subject to the following conditions. That the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the detached dwelling as indicated on Schedule A and B, attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in this written decision are not authorized. And that during the construction of the detached dwelling, the measures outlined within the erosion and sediment control plan prepared by Daniel Young be implemented as indicated on Schedule C, attached to and forming part of this decision. And finally, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you very much. The application is approved and the motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Young. Our next application is, A23-09 for 1098 Honey Harbor Road. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, I'll share my screen. The application before you this morning is on Honey Harbor Road, and the property is consisting of approximately 3.96 hectares. At the present time, there is a residential dwelling on the property and 111.48 square meter garage, which is located in the front yard, currently being used as a garage and storage. The owner does wish to convert the second floor of the garage to a dwelling unit, which is permitted in the rural zone. Section 4.25 of the zoning bylaw does require that a garage with a dwelling unit in it must be located in the rear yard. The property has been identified as being within 500 meters of a closed landfill site, and an MOECP D1 land use and compatibility guidelines will apply in this particular instance. However, as there are no records available for the closed landfill site, and there is already a residential dwelling on the property, a D4 study will not be required. However, staff are recommending as a condition of approval that a raw water sample prior to filtration or treatment to provide a detailed water chemistry within the regulated parameters of the MOECP be submitted to the township as a condition of approval. The District of Muskoka official plan and the Township of Georgian Bay official plan both permit secondary dwelling units in accessory buildings, and the general intent of the zoning bylaw is being met, and the variance request will address the location of the existing garage to allow for the additional residential unit. At this time, staff are recommending approval of the application subject to the recommended conditions.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, has there been correspondence in this application?
No correspondence was received.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and would they wish to address, so not in person or online?
The applicant is in the Zoom meeting now.
In the Zoom.
Yes, Angela Cass here.
Is Mr. Lucas, is there anything that you wish to add to the comments made by the planning department?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Could you be brief? Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the committee on this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public session, bring the application before the committee. For any questions or concerns. And we'll begin with member Rivet.
Microphone.
I just lost my documents. Could you start with someone else?
I thought you said you lost your dog and I was wondering how. Okay. Very well. Glad to hear that dog's okay. Member Jarvis, please.
Yeah, seems pretty clear to me. I have no issues and no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Predko.
Just to confirm, and I'm having trouble reading the survey, both the one that was attached to the planning report and was presented on screen, but this is a waterfront property. That top right-hand corner is Georgian Bay.
No, it's inland. You may see Honey Harbor Road.
Right on the bottom left, but on the top right, I'm just trying to see what if that's a road or on the top right, or if that's.
I guess we don't see what you're looking at.
But, I'm wondering if Deb could please put back on the screen the survey.
It's a creek that comes from Barron's Lake.
Oh, it's a creek. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. No, I don't have any other clarifications that I need. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Predko. Member Schmidt.
I think it's just a case of the way the property was initially laid out when it was built, the fact the shop's there and utilize an existing structure. I definitely don't see any impact to any neighboring properties or anybody in the area. So I have no issue with what's being proposed here.
Thank you, Member Schmidt. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had an opportunity to have a quick site visit yesterday. The house and the shop is set back a long way from the road. There is nobody visible whatsoever. It's existing, and I think all they're trying to do is legalize what's already there. So I would support this.
Thank you. Member Rivet.
I have no concerns with the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Moved by Member Jarvis, seconded by Member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment approves minor variance application A23-09 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 1098 Honey Harbor Road to permit a secondary dwelling unit in an existing garage according to section 4.1.7 part C and 4.25B of the zoning bylaw. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions. A, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence with Township Financial Service indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the detached garage existing as of the date of this decision as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear in the schedules are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. That a raw water sample be taken prior to filtration or treatment to provide a detailed well water chemistry within the regulated parameters of the MOECP. That confirmation be provided from a licensed septic installer that the existing sewage treatment system capacity can support the additional dwelling unit. And that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued to the for the development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. The application is approved. Our next application and final application this morning is A23-11 for 1470 Island 90 6 Mile Lake. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is a water access only property on 6 Mile Lake with an area of 1,578.27 square meters and a frontage on the lake of 51.21 meters. This property, subject to the requests, is wider than it is deep, as well as the topography of the land makes it extremely difficult to locate additional construction within the requirements of the zoning bylaw. The lot is part of the overall development fabric of Island 90, which is comprised of seasonal cottages with water access only, and the proposed development will be compatible with the surrounding properties. The owner purchased the portion of the shore road allowance in the front of the subject property, providing direct access to 6 Mile Lake in November 2022. A pre-application consultation was completed in September 2022, and at the time, the owner was proposing an addition, a dryland boathouse, a new septic system, and an additional accessory structure, which was potentially identified as being either a sleeping cabin or a garage. The pre-application consultation memo indicated that a zoning bylaw amendment application would be required. A zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted in January of this year and included a scaled back version of the original development proposal after discussions with township staff. It was determined by staff that the proposal could be dealt with a minor variance application, and a zoning bylaw amendment would not be required. In order to meet the requirements of the Ontario Building Code, the proposed new septic system must be installed on the location noted on Schedule A, which I have up on the screen, requiring a minor variance for relief from the zoning bylaw requirements. Section 4.26 of the zoning bylaw regulates the location of a proposed septic system in regards to the high water mark setback. The location of the new system will not meet the minimum 30 meters, nor will it meet the minimum 10-meter rear yard setback, and are to be addressed in the variance requests. The proposed 103.75 square meter, 1.5 story addition will be added to the 81.76 square meter existing cottage, bringing the new gross floor area to 185.6 square meters. The existing cottage on the property is recognized as legal non-complying, and the proposed addition will increase the gross floor area of the dwelling by 127%, whereas the maximum permitted is 70%. There will also be a further reduction in the rear yard setback, which must also be addressed through the variance process. The proposal is within 120 meters of a type 1 fish habitat, and I will bring that up to show the picture. Apologize here. As you can see here, oh, sorry, did that not come up? Yeah, I have to stop that and let's bring that one up. I apologize. And where's my share screen? There we go. Yep, I got it. There we go. So as you can see, this is the subject lands here where my cursor is, and this is the portion of the shore road allowance that has been purchased. This is where the fish habitat type 1 is, which is barely just touching the corner of the subject lands. But the proposal, I'm not denying, is within 120 meters of a type 1 fish habitat. An aquatic habitat assessment was prepared by EcoReg dated October 11th, 2022. This was a result of the pre-application consultation and the then requirement of a zoning bylaw amendment based on the original proposed development, which included a boathouse. This assessment was submitted with the zoning bylaw amendment and subsequently became a part of the minor variance application. The new proposal is part of the minor variance request, and staff would not have requested an aquatic habitat assessment based on the location. However, the assessment did conclude that the type of waterfront vegetation and rock location is very unlikely to provide habitat for fish, and no disturbance will take place during construction. I believe at this time, there has been a number of emails sent in of support of the application were received by the township. And based on the application submitted and the justification behind the requests and the number of times that the applicant has dealt with township staff in discussion and trying to come to different ideas that could be done, it's my professional opinion that the proposal meets the intent of the District of Muskoka official plan, the township official plan, and the general intent of the zoning bylaw. And at this time, staff are recommending approval of the application as presented.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, has there been correspondence in this application?
19 letters of support were received from Dan Clifford and Shane Ingersoll, Dave Edwards, Evan Morgan, Irene and Bill Newman, James Otwood, Jamie Vieira, Jane Muller Perry, Joe Reedon, John Bennett, Margaret and Denise Locke, Mike Ferguson, Nevelda Saw, Stephanie and Kevin Plew, Steve Bennett, Stephen and Catherine Fisher, Vince Hossick, Will Atwood, Rainer K. Ben Haas, and Allison Gordon, and one letter of objection was received from Meg McCrae.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present and do they wish to address the committee on this? Please identify yourself and your address for the record. I think you need to, I think your microphone is, there we go.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay,
thanks.
good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Shane Bennett. My address is 520 Dover Court in Toronto. My wife and Jen, I both really appreciate your consideration in this matter. I would like to sincerely thank all the people who submitted letters on our behalf. I would also like to thank the members of the township, specifically Deb McCabe, Kaylee Nicholson, David Smith, and Dave Fedori, for all your help and your guidance over this last 2 years. I've been a resident on 6 Mile Lake since I was 4 years old, so about 40 years now. I spent my summers on 6 Mile, and it's always been my intention that my children do the same. Since I was about 12, it was my dream to someday buy the abandoned cottage in the bay. And 2 years ago, I was able to achieve that dream. When the previous owner and myself spoke about buying the cottage, it was my intention to keep it as much of the building intact in order to maintain its history. And it was built by his father and his grandfather back in 1964. We are only proposing adding to the building so that it can work for our family. We have a young son and a daughter, so we need 3 bedrooms total with enough living space. The current building is quite small, with being just over 800 square feet, and it only has 2 bedrooms. It is my understanding that we meet the 4 tests of the minor variance. The application is minor. We're not asking for any major changes to the existing property or building. We're working as close within the bylaw as possible while trying to meet the needs of our family. There's been a lot of back and forth over the years with different members of the township, different design proposals, different ideas. So again, thank you to them for that, for guiding us along. The second test is it desirable for the appropriate use of the land, building, or structure? So the land will be used for a family cottage. It maintains the general intent of the official plan. We have planned for our proposal, keeping the natural beauty and the surrounding environment intact. As Deb will show, you're going to show pictures, Deb? Yeah, okay. You'll be able to see where we are in the bay. And it should be noted that the previous owner of our cottage also owned the cottage, our neighboring cottage. They were built within as far apart from each other as possible. So it's a very quiet bay. And again, we're maintaining the natural beauty. And finally, it maintains a general intent of the zoning bylaw. We believe it does. So I will try to keep this brief, but just for the septic system, our top concern has always been to install the septic system on our property, but it's difficult, as you can see, with the size and the shape. I actually had a phone call with the township and discussed options prior to purchasing the cottage. I spoke with Dave Bedori at that time because that was a main concern, and we only have a holding tank currently on the property. Since then, we've gone through the process, as Deb mentioned, of buying the shore road allowance to add to the overall size of the property and to accommodate that septic system. For the location of itself, we've gone back and forth, but this has been determined that it's the best location. For the GFA, the current building, as I said, only has 2 bedrooms, and we need 3 for our family. In comparison to other cottages on the lake that are going up, the monster cottages that it was mentioned before, we are not looking to do anything of that sort. We are very limited in expansion because the cottage was specifically built right into the back property lines. So we are not able to build to the north as we're too close to that property line. We can't build to the east as a rock wall starts about 5 feet behind the cottage. We can't build west as this is getting closer to the lake. And so we are limited where we can expand to the south as the front property line juts slightly eastward. So again, with all of the back and forth, this design is what we've come up with. The second half story is just a workaround because we're really not able to do much else with the restrictions of the bylaw. Additional notes, just that there's no cottages at all behind us in any direction, so we would not be blocking anyone's view. Because of the tree coverage in the high tree line, you can't really see our building too well from the lake. We've had 2 surveys done now and a fish habitat assessment as well. And both of these resulted in there being no identifiable issues with this building, what we've proposed. And that's it. So again, I thank you for your time and your consideration in this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application? If so, please identify yourself.
Hi there.
Oh, I heard some,
I think I raised my hand. I wrote the letter. Please excuse my laryngitis here, but
excuse, hello, you're somehow, you must have the microphone or more than one microphone going, because it's almost impossible to understand your voice on this end. That should make her less quiet.
is that good?
That sounds better.
That's better. Okay, perfect. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please identify yourself and
Okay.
the record.
My name is Meg Cray, and I am the owner of the property to the south, 1444 Island 90. I'm just here because I wrote a letter and I just wanted that to be discussed. Just wanted to make sure that was discussed.
Thank you very much. Yes, the letter was circulated. I think everyone that's on the committee has had a chance to read that and understand it. So if there's any questions regarding the letter, I'm sure they'll come up when we poll the candidates. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public portion of this application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or concerns. And we will begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have not had an opportunity to visit the site. I think the report is very detailed. I'm encouraged to see 19 letters of support. And I also, take into account the 1 letter of concern or objection from Ms. McRae. I guess it's just not really so much with the application, but I look at the existing structure or some of the pictures and it looks, shall I say, less than perfect. And I'm just wondering, for my own clarity, and maybe other members, if you're going to be putting an addition, be a plan to renovate the existing.
And can I answer that?
Do you have a picture? Can he answer the question?
Inside of the cottage.
Did you pose that to Mr. Bennett?
Yes, I did.
Yes, Mr. Bennett, please.
Sure, through the chair. The outside is always the same reaction from people that come and see it and they say, you're going to tear this down. And then I say, just come on inside. And as Deb will bring up the picture of the inside, it's a beautiful cedar cottage. It has been damaged by weather and the cottage is tipped forward. So there does need to be significant work for the foundation. But if you take a look at that picture there, the inside of the building is quite nice and it's structurally sound. We do have permits for the foundation to shore that up. So once that's leveled, it's going to take some work certainly. But again, as I mentioned before, it was the intention from the start to maintain that building as best as I could.
Yeah, Ms. McCabe, could you make your screen full screen, please? It certainly doesn't reflect that on the outside.
No, it does not. I understand that. What happened to the cottage over the years, the owner lives in the States and had not been able to make it to the lake for many years. And at one point, The cottage sort of tipped forward, the front window got busted open and animals moved in. That's a nice picture of the cottage. When we purchased it, I had about 4 boatloads of garbage that had to be removed from there, or barge loads, I should say.
Oh, that's
Mr.
great.
Bennett, thank you for that clarity. Glad to hear you're going to shore up the foundation. It was just to say, it doesn't really have to do with the
It was-
application, but it's a
No, I hear
concern,
you.
right?
And it was suggested by David Smith earlier, and we've gone through these conversations, but that's the reason for that.
It looks lovely inside.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Matthews. Member Jarvis.
Yeah, I too had some concerns looking at the pictures on the outside of that. It looked like a renovation nightmare show that you see on TV, but I appreciate what's going to be happening. And I like that shot of the inside, so thank you. There's a point made about a sewage treatment system that's within the context of the application. Are we not looking at a typical septic tank and bed, or are we looking at a system that's over and above that?
If I might, Mr. Jarvis, the septic is really not a part of that. It's just more of
Okay.
the.
Yeah, it does indicate it's going to be addressed through another minor variance.
We have our chief building official here that can address any questions.
It was more just out of curiosity. I mean, we're looking at, usually we see, septic tank and septic bed. This says sewage treatment. So I guess I was seeking clarification, if that's possible.
That, if I may.
Yes, please.
Generally, that means the same thing.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. I can go with that. Then I come to the letter that was posted. We got it yesterday through circulation from Meg McCrae. I did send a note over to Deb on this. I see Shania, I'm not sure who's handling it. There were some concerns noted in that letter. Some of them look like there's concerns that existed before the current application, the updated application came in, but I just seeking clarification or clarity on that. Can we address some of the issues that are in that letter?
And you were posing that question to who?
Our planners, I presume, because they're the ones who have to look at the concerns brought to our attention by Ms. McCrae.
Member Jarvis, if I might, rather than making that a general question in regard to the entire letter, is there something specifically in the comments that were made in that letter that you'd like to address?
It could be more specific, I suppose, by just going through each one of them. I presume the environmental impact fish habitat assessment that Deb, you mentioned that's dealt with, correct?
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, and to the member that's asking the questions, to Member Jarvis, if you want, I can quickly go through. I've made notes on each particular concern that was raised.
I
So-
expect that other members of the committee are going to have questions in regard to those objections. So I think that'd be very helpful if you could
Certainly.
summarize that for us.
Certainly, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll deal with if it's okay to go ahead, with the first one being minor variance test number 1, stating that with respect to the environmental impact study, it is referenced that section C1.4.5F of the official plan of Muskoka and also ours D166 of ours. I'd also like to refer one step further to C1.4.5E of the district official plan, which says type 1 or unknown habitat should be treated as an area of concern, and habitat may have to be verified by a qualified specialist prior to approval of development. It doesn't say it has to be. So that's the word is may. I'd also like to continue with D1. It wouldn't require, that's correct. And then section D164 of our official plan, basically in one part says, a fish habitat impact assessment prepared by a qualified professional shall be completed to the satisfaction of the township and may be subject to an independent peer review directed by the township at the expense of the applicant. And that was one of the issues raised, whether it wasn't peer reviewed. So that's my comments on that, if that's okay. In regards to number 2, the construction of an illegal dock in the fish habitat. This is a floating dock. It's an existing dock that was unhooked for the winter months. and it just floated over into the fish habitat. Mr. Bennett has returned the dock to its location and has hooked it back up for the summer months. Okay,
Great.
so it's not a new dock. It's very much an older dock.
And it's not a fixed dock. it's
That's
floating.
correct. It's a floating dock. In regards to the overhead wires on the subject property, I did have consultation with Kaylee this morning. We talked about it. The line that is being referenced is the service line to the house, and it is a non-issue over the septic system. In regards to the setback for the high water mark for the sewage system, as Kaylee had stated previously, all we're requesting is the location to be addressed. If the time comes that septic system cannot be put there, then of course the owner would be back for another variance, and they're aware of that. So this is all at building permit stage. All we can do at this point is look at, this is the location that it will work. Okay.
Thank you.
And of course, if it didn't work in that location, they would be back for another variance.
Okay, just so that we're clear on that, you're looking at the location from a setback standpoint. Needs to be
Correct.
As far as that's the best place you can find it.
That's correct.
Further on, when construction starts and somebody from the building department goes out there, if it doesn't seem to work there, then
We would be into another,
well, and I guess that would be between the building department and the
That's correct.
applicant to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's.
If I could just add to that, Mr. Chair. Everything on this property is actually pushed to the one side, as you noticed it, and some to the back. That side is crown land. There aren't any neighbors. That's the side if you're gonna be noisy on and all the rest of it, to be further away from your neighbors should be over that way. And so when we originally discussed the property kind of thing, we talked about moving the building closer to the neighbors. And it's like, okay, because it looked like we might have been able to meet some of the setbacks if we moved. Well, there was two things with that. Number one is the preservation or the use of an existing structure that had some value in and of itself, of course. And number two is that when we moved it over, we had a problem with finding an appropriate spot for a septic tank without cutting a whole bunch of trees down now also. So we go back into the environment about what we're trying to achieve overall. So what you're seeing here between the septic system location was moving to size wise into the location where some of the trees and so on and so forth may not be as much of an issue. And then using the existing building envelope close to property that is crown land and therefore has fewer neighboring issues on it overall. So septic system kind of comes about from that. And we all know that without a septic system, it's very very tough moving forward. So it's a priority to us. As the property is less deep than it is wide, 30 meters then becomes a problem, right? So we pushed it back as far as we could go. And as Deb pointed out and Kaylee pointed out, yes, it's still subject to OBC code requirements under that side of things. And if it doesn't work for Kaylee and her staff, then we will be maybe back.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. McCabe, is there any further comment that you have on the letter that was received?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chair. I've gone through it. There was mention, of course, of in the end of an email that was included with this letter that was between Mr. Smith and the applicant. And looking over it this morning, I went through it, and what is mentioned in the email isn't even close to what is being recommended now.
That's what I thought.
Previously.
I understand.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deb.
Back to you, Member Jarvis. Was there anything further regarding the application you'd like to bring to the?
No, and I'm sure you appreciate that. Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Very good, thank you. Member Predco, please.
My only remaining concern, again, is still about the location of the septic, but as it's been noted, that will be addressed in the future and by the building department and if necessary by this committee. But otherwise, I think the proposal as presented is trying to be as respectful of the parameters that it has been given as possible. So I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. Member Rivet, please.
Yes, thank you. The only question I had was why in heaven's name would you keep that building? But now that you explained the reason, I totally understand, and I really hope you can keep the tree. Otherwise, I have no questions with the application.
Thank you. Member Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Going back to the young application, we looked at the percentage of increase. And I'm just curious to see what is the maximum GFA that is permitted on that, or what is the size of the property first, and what is the maximum GFA permitted on that property currently, Deb?
If you give me 1 minute, Mr. Chair, I will find that answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Was there
Do we know offhand what the total size of that property is?
Ms. McKay is looking that up as we speak. So
Okay, I didn't know if she'd have that more so than the GFA number. And I know it is definitely it's a unique property. Look forward to hopefully the boat that's been up on shore removed at some point in time. I think from the tornado that went through there a number of years ago. But just looking for clarification on, because again, the size is a significant increase from what is existing there, but just curious to see what is actually permitted.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can let you know that the area of the lot is 1,578.27 square meters. But I will look up the GFA for you. Just 1 moment.
Okay. In the report, it says a maximum permitted of 275. However, I thought that was on properties that were over an acre in size. Section F5973. But I just looking for clarification. There's so much with the community plan. It's not easy to navigate for anybody on either side of the table sometimes.
and just to put that in the form of a question, just where were you going with that, Member Schmidt?
Well, I'm trying to see, because based on the numbers that are there for the maximum size of expansion, I just don't know. I think it says where 185 is the total. I'm just scanning through it's a big report too, but I think it takes us to the one, is a total of 185, Deb, now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did find some information out here. Lot area is in fact calculated at, I believe, is larger than what I had stated. It's 2,073.5 square meters. The proposed new GFA will be 185.6 square meters. Just 1 second. So it's an increase in the GFA by 127% instead of the permitted 70%.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, so that answered your questions, Member Schmidt?
Yeah, I think the maximum that's permitted on that property is 190 square meters in its current GFA form, but the report says 275. I just wanted to clarify which, because when we use metric numbers, I'm sorry, I don't know what that equates to an acre, because I think the GFA number is based on an acre or more lots on the 6 Mile Lake Community Plan, I thought.
Okay, it appears from the information we just received from the planner that the final GFA here is 185 square meters, which is well within the numbers that you just mentioned. So I think we're okay there.
Yep, that's good. That's all the clarification. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the members of committee? Okay. Seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Matthews, seconded by member Rivet. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A 23-11 as amended to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 1470 Island 96 Mile Lake to permit the construction of an addition and second story on the existing non-complying dwelling and a new septic system. The variances requested are an increase in the average gross floor area for expansion, a reduction in the minimum front yard setback, and a reduction in the minimum interior side yard and minimum rear yard setbacks for the proposed septic system location. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions: that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the proposed addition and septic system as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. That the owner prepare and submit to the satisfaction of the township an erosion and sediment control plan prior to the development of the property. And that this decision applies 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The resolution is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you very much, everybody. Really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Mr. Bennett. And I have one further resolution. Moved by member Schmidt, seconded by member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 12:22 p.m. until July 14th of 2023 at 10 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All of those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you.